Hey now, and welcome to Citadel Credit Union's Open for Business podcast. Today's a special one. We've got two guests with us who haven't been here before, but not just because it's their first time on the episode, but it's the first time that we've not brought business members or prospects who actually own businesses out in the community. Today, we're talking to organizations that work on a daily basis to provide a better business community right here in Chester County, Pennsylvania. So I'm here to welcome Laura Manion, our CEO of the Chester County Chamber of Commerce, and Mike Grigalonis, the COO and president of the Chester County Economic Development Corp. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. So today's a really interesting day, and we want to learn a lot more from you about not just how you provide the organization an opportunity to work together in the community, but how your organizations work in harmony to be able to provide businesses with a greater solution. For me, when I think about what we have to offer to our businesses, it's really got to be about them understanding what's available to them first without searching for other resources that are both costly or maybe unnecessary. So if I could ask you to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience and tell us a little bit about your organization and where you're from. And it's dealer's choice.
Ladies first.
Okay, thank you. Laura Manion, President of Chester County Chamber of Business and Industry. I have been in this role for about 3.5 years, and I think the number one question I get asked is, what is a Chamber of Commerce? So it's a great place to start. We are a very regional chamber, so we don't just cover Chester County. We're in 155 zip codes in the Southeast.
155.
Yeah, so we have 625 members currently, and we span every industry, every size. So from your solo entrepreneur and your mom and pop shops all the way up to some of our largest regional companies, international companies, Fortune 500. So it's very eclectic membership, and it's great because every day I get to meet somebody who does something new. And our tagline is connections, community, and advocacy, and that's really what the Chamber does. We connect people, we market their business, we are cheerleaders for them, and then we're also advocates for them in the business sense in terms of policy on the local, state, and federal levels.
So first of all, thank you for what you do. Second of all, it's an incredible resource that I hope more businesses at the end of this will become aware that is available to them. Mike?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm Mike Grigalonis. I'm the president and COO at the Chester County Economic Development Council. Like Laura, our name suggests that we are focused on Chester County, which we are, of course, but we also think regionally. Of course, our economy is very much regional, and so naturally a lot of the services that we provide do bleed into other counties, in some cases across the Commonwealth. But our mission is really about growing businesses, and so we have a portfolio of services designed to help businesses grow, whether that be financing, workforce development and training, support for our startup businesses and innovation and entrepreneurship, or real estate and more the site selection, site redevelopment, those types of things. But we're really at the end of the day all about trying to do whatever it takes to help businesses grow and create jobs and create wealth in our community.
So thank you. That's a fantastic overview of the Economic Development Corp's mission. When you think about the current business economy, there's so many different things going on that affect today, and it seems to be ever changing. What do you think are the biggest challenges in front of businesses today that you see, and how are you trying to help those businesses cope with the obstacles that feel insurmountable to them?
Why don't you start with that one?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question, first of all. I think there's probably a couple different answers depending on what type of business you're talking about. If you ask me what's the biggest challenge like for a startup business, I'd probably say funding is always one.
Access to capital, right?
Access to capital is probably number one for a startup company. But then if you're asking me someone that's maybe in a growth mode, that challenge is probably going to be I can't attract and retain talent. So it's kind of a different answer. Probably depending on what business, but no question there's challenge. I mean, that's where we try to impact, I think, the two areas that, probably 2/3 of our staff are dedicated to financing and workforce development. Those are the two.
Oh, I didn't realize that,
issues.
2/3.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a team of about 45, but as I say, about 2/3 of them are dedicated to financing and workforce development. So that's really where we try to we do other stuff, but that's really where we're trying to concentrate our resources.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that 2/3 of the workforce was that targeted. That's great.
Yeah, and I think just piggybacking off of that, like for us, because we have so many members across every industry, everyone needs something different, which makes my job even more fun. Because I could be advocating for lowering the corporate net income tax and permitting reform, and then, the next day, SEPTA and childcare. And so for us, it's certainly workforce development, and we do a lot of programming with each other and on our own and with other chambers on, how to attract and retain talent. And then we do a lot of networking as well. So we host over 50 events a year where our members can come together. And my favorite thing is when a member meets another member and then they're off doing business together, which, that makes me so happy to know that, that's what we're really here for in the core mission of the chamber.
The connection. Yeah. How does it feel when a business doesn't know where they fit? Meaning, do they feel like they're too small? Do they feel like they're too big? My knowledge of both of your organizations is that it's not a one-size-fits-all, but that you have a specialized approach to different sized businesses. But could you tell us all a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, I think Mike too, like there's a manufacturing focus, there's, education. I think where we are in Chester County and the region, like we're so lucky. We've got meds, we've got eds, we've got literally everything. And so I think in both of our organizations, there's literally a place for everyone because we're doing all the programming. We're doing all, we'll do HR for small business one day and then we'll do a tax event on the big beautiful bill the next. And it really is a place where like everyone can take something away at the end of the day of like, okay, I went to that event and I learned something, or I met somebody who can help my business, and that's really the goal.
Yeah, I think similar to what Laura's saying, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I've been here for 26 years at the CCDC, and we've been around for 65 years, but over the last 5 years, I feel like we've really made a conscious effort to be able to serve that small business. We've always been good at sort of that mid-sized to larger business with different services, but the last 5 years we've really grown for that small business, that startup, or that business that's just taken maybe that first step in growth. We have a new revolving loan program. I think I mentioned earlier we're going to stand up an angel group, so we're making a conscious decision to do a better job serving those small businesses than we have in our 60-plus year history. And so to your point, we're much more better suited to serve, again, that whole spectrum of the types of businesses, not just a certain type or a certain size or a certain industry. So we're trying to be, as Laura was mentioning, kind of a resource to all.
Yeah, and we've really focused on small business the last couple of years because I think, too, the chamber, being as large as it is sometimes hit on like as the big business chamber. Yeah. But for our events, I would say 75% of our membership is small business, and they're working together in these events, meeting each other, and how can we work together. We recently had 2 women sitting on a panel for a Women in Business event. One owns a catering company, one owns a winery. They're now doing wine together. And it's like those, little things that we're doing, those little connections, it becomes a big thing. And that's really, it's so exciting to see that happen.
Yeah. So for the startup business, the people who, just had the gumption to open the doors, whether that's to the public or to business
community.
Where do they get started with each of your organizations? Like, what's their path?
That's a great question. So we see, I'll tell probably the most, if we ever get just a random inquiry that someone, Googles us and finds us on the website, the most common question we get is, I have an idea that I want to start a catering company, but I have no idea what my first step is. So it's that really someone that just has a scratch of an idea. That seems to be the most, like, again, just from a Google standpoint. So, and that's actually something we don't do. So we rely on partners like business planning. Like there's lots of resources out there to help an entrepreneur write a business plan. And it's an important piece, as you know, in banking. You're not getting capital if you don't have a business plan. And you'd be surprised at the number of entrepreneurs and business owners that don't have business plans. So that's probably the first place we see them engaged. And then so our ideal path is we refer them maybe to SCORE or a small business development center, help them get a business plan in place, then come back to us. And now we have those sources of capital that, even if they need $30,000 or $50,000 of working capital, we now have programs that can assist in that. So I think that's probably the best way that I would describe, kind of how people originally engage with us for those startups.
Yeah, I'll give another plug to SCORE. Chester and Delaware County, I just think they're incredible, and they have mentors who work for free, and really assisting. And we'll have a member who comes to us and say, I need advice on this. I refer them to SCORE, or we have a lot of attorneys in the membership. It's always great to know a lot of attorneys. So, we'll pass them off to those if you need a trademark, or, you're writing an employee handbook. And then I think with Mike and I's organizations, like, this is where the synergy starts of, like, Mike starts with those things, and then we're helping with all the various events and programs that we're doing, so that they're getting out and meeting people in the community and learning from them. And, just these roundtables that we do of, what are you seeing? And, maybe that's a problem that I'm having and I didn't really know how to handle it. So, somebody else has some advice for me that's in the trenches with me. And I think, again, we always go back to that community aspect and those connections.
And if I could add maybe just one more thought on that. So the other common thing that we get is people are often looking for that mentor or that coach that kind of stays with them as they're, developing their business, developing their plan. And groups like SCORE and the SBDC are great. I mean, they work more in a group setting, so it's classroom-based or seminar-based, or there's a webinar, something like that. So we're trying to build up a little bit. We're not there yet, but we're trying to build up a bigger portfolio of services of almost sort of like SCORE, really, candidly, but that would be more of a one-to-one mentor or coach, or one to a couple. Not so much classroom-based. We find that people really want that one-to-one time to really think specifically about their business. So it's an area we're trying to build as well.
Almost like a trusted advisor, mentor-mentee relationship.
Exactly.
I think we at the Chamber hear that a lot. Like, I'm just looking for somebody who can give me some advice, and whether it's peer-to-peer, or we had an event once where a bunch of 50-year-olds stood up and said, I've never had a mentor. Is there somebody in the room that would like to just grab coffee and we can learn from each other? And I think especially post-pandemic, a lot of younger employees are looking not just for somebody who is more senior who might be able to give advice, but somebody else their age that's also, whether they're in the same industry or not, but, how are you working in your environment, and how can I take something from that?
In this chair, listening to both of you describe your organizations, you sound like master connectors. I know it's a rudimentary term, but it's an educated approach to providing resources to the people who make up the business fabric of each one of the tentacles of Chester County. So focusing on Chester County, what do you see as the biggest challenges in Chester County right now? And what do you see as the greatest opportunity?
I think opportunity-wise, we're the fastest growing county in the state. We're the most educated. And we've got so much potential with talent pool. I think we're in a really good position. Just as I said, eds, meds, manufacturing, like all of these industries are growing. One thing actually, though, that I do think we need to focus on is it's an aging county. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we do have high median income, but also very high housing costs. And so that's something the Chamber's been addressing of, are you paying your employees enough to live here? Because if they need to move to one of our neighboring counties, then the travel to work becomes tedious, and a lot of people want to work from home these days. So we're starting to really advocate on behalf of our workforce in terms of housing or childcare costs or public transit. These things are important to business as well.
Do you see a huge shift in businesses being more adaptive to the needs of the employees?
Yeah, I think post-pandemic, prior to my time at the Chamber, I worked for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I think post-pandemic employers started to realize I need to create a sense of community in my place of work, because especially millennial and Gen Z employees, they want to feel like they have a company culture that their employer cares about them. So all of these issues, that maybe we didn't think about as business issues previously are really coming to the forefront of, is my employer going to be more flexible if my kid's sick, or, if my SEPTA train no longer is available to me, or I needed to move to Delaware County because I couldn't find a house in Chester County. So I think that's something that we are really taking the lead on advocating across the state, and we're starting to see some great returns on that, and really speaking with our policymakers and our businesses about how we can really help our employees. But I think Chester County has a lot of opportunities, and I feel very lucky that that's where we are.
Yeah, I agree. I think from an opportunities and what makes Chester County special is the term quality of place is a sort of an industry term that we use, but it describes all those things, like the highest educated workforce, the beautiful trails that we have, the top-notch school districts, AAA bond rating, all those things that are kind of like best in class for Chester County all make up that quality of place. And I can tell you that a lot of my peers across the Commonwealth that are thinking about, their economic development strategies and what can I do to make my community more competitive, a lot of them are in this marketing mode where they're trying to get people to move into their community because they don't have enough talent for companies that are growing. So we're fortunate that we probably have the opposite problem. We have the problem where a lot of people want to be in Chester County. But the challenge is we sometimes have a hard time, as Laura can attest to, is where are they going to live? Like it's
supply and demand.
It's hard to find places.
I've looked
to live
at a lot of houses over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I knocked myself out for 4.5 months myself.
Yeah, so it's a I guess you would say it's a good problem to have. It's better than not having the demand, but we've got to do a better job of figuring out how to meet that demand.
Yeah, we have high housing costs. We also have like 5 of the top 10 highest rental townships in the state, and that's something I think as a county and as a community that we need to address.
I think the other opportunity that I would point to is again going back to that theme of regionalism. I think we've done a lot of work in over the last 18 months with Brookings Institute. You probably heard of Brookings and the Pew Foundation, and there's a real push, really for all the economic development leaders in the region and the chambers and the Greater Philly Chamber. All these groups are really trying to pursue that theme of regionalism. And I think that there's, we always struggle with that as a region, especially compared to other metros. Just, I think for lots of reasons, Commonwealth form of government probably being the number one reason, but we all have our own pride in our communities. We were talking about Phoenixville earlier, or what parish you're from in Delaware County, or, what community. So we have that kind of that local pride. But how do we think more regionally? Because the other metros are doing that, and we need to do a better job. And I think we're primed to do that, probably more so than we have been in the past. So I'm hoping that there's some real opportunities there to become a more. I mean, certainly we're going to continue to focus on Chester County, but how can we all be more effective branding and marketing and responding to the business community as a region as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of chambers, there's a lot of economic development councils, and we all sort of need to come together. And we do joint events with Delaware County Chamber, Mainline Chamber, Philadelphia Chamber. And the more we do together, the better we are in the end.
Do you see a lot of cross-pollination impacting the communities? Meaning, for example, a lot more networking alliance across the counties as you continue to reach beyond just Chester?
Yeah, we do so many joint events, especially with Delaware County Mainline Chambers, but also the chambers within Chester County. And I think if you can continue to be in a room with 50 new people, that's a great opportunity for you for business. And so that's why we're always thinking regionally. And when Mike and I do events together, we have overlap, but there's always somebody new that you're going to meet. And that's my goal. I'm always looking very regionally and all about collaboration. Like, who can we partner with to make sure that our businesses are in front of new people every time they're out at one of our events?
Yeah, it just makes us more competitive too. Like you think about some of these larger funding sources, whether they be private foundations or some federal or big state source. It's hard to go there as just Chester County, right? They're not looking for that. They're looking to fund a region. And the other thing with Chester County is we've got very positive demographics. So sometimes we're not as attractive to fund certain programs because we have such strong economic demographics, but we have struggles too, and sometimes that gets lost. So anyway, thinking regionally, I think, makes us much more competitive. So even though the money will be spread across the region, it's still better than getting zero in a lot of cases that we would if we just went alone as Chester County. So there's lots of benefits to thinking regionally.
So, Mike, when I think about our current economic situation, what type of forecast do you see, or what type of impacts do you see for the greater economy here in Chester County?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. I think I'd give you a mixed answer. I think on the positive side for us, just speaking from our experience, I will tell you that we do a lot of SBA 504 lending, and I would tell you that our volume this year is up significantly from where it was last year. So that's indicative of, at least in some pockets, there are, and it's a lot of fixed asset financing. So people are buying buildings, they're buying real estate, they're buying equipment. That's a lot of what we do. As I say, we're probably almost double what we were last year. So that's encouraging. On the flip side of that, there's definitely some uncertainty, whether you're talking about, the state budget as we sit here today is still in flux. There's tariff questions, there's tax questions, there's things like that. So, that's probably mitigating a little bit some of the positivity we're feeling. So, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, I would say, that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I'd echo that response. Uncertainty is never good for business. But at the Chamber, we actually have a government affairs consultant that does a lot of our local, state, and federal updates. So we have a very active government affairs committee. We try to do a lot of these legislative events where we'll bring in speakers on the big beautiful bill. We're doing a tax event with the Delaware County Chamber in a couple weeks on that. And then, we're always trying to just give updates. We don't have a budget. It's been 10 or 11 weeks, whatever it is. Here's what that impact is on your business or your nonprofit or your school district. Because I think a lot of people say, well, I don't really know how that impacts me. That's the kind of advocacy and legislative updates that the chamber is doing, that we're telling you this is how this directly impacts your business. And so tariff implications, we're always taking information from the U.S. Chamber, feeding it out. This is how this might trickle down to you. We recently had a meeting with Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan and all of our coffee producers. Our coffee, a lot of coffee shops, Lavazza North America is headquartered in Westchester. That's going to be a big impact on their business if we see a 50% increase in tariffs with Brazil, because half the coffee in this country comes from Brazil. So I think there's a lot of things that Mike said. There is some uncertainty, but a lot of opportunity, and how we're trying to handle it is just keeping the updates coming.
The other thing I would add is thinking about, we talked earlier about that regionalism, and I think I mentioned the Brookings report earlier. So they did this long, in-depth study and ultimately determined that we as a region have underperformed as compared to other metro areas. We've created jobs net over, I think it's 5 years, but not to where they would expect us to, and not to the level of some of our peers. So one of the reasons, and this comes back to, again, that regional theme that we talked about, one of the reasons we haven't performed as well is because we have not collaborated as effectively as some other regions. So that's why I say earlier, with every challenge and threat, there is opportunity. So we're trying to hopefully capitalize on this sobering news that we got from the Brookings Institute, and trying to really motivate, hopefully, a regional spirit to respond to that less than positive news that we got.
Just more forever connectors.
Yeah.
When you think about being in executive leadership positions like the two of you are today, you have the breadth and depth and the weight of carrying your organization and carrying a torch for each one of them. But it's hard not to have something that you are personally passionate about. So Laura, I know that you've been very passionate about childcare, and Mike, we talked a little bit about this earlier. But if you could give us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing on some of your personal passions through the lens of both of your organizations and how you're trying to bring that to life, it'd be great.
Sure. So I talked a little bit about how we're trying to have some of these policy issues really become business issues. And I took this job when I was 6 months pregnant with my first son. And
did you have a plan for childcare at that point?
So that's how this all started. When I was 5 months pregnant, we toured childcares, and post-pandemic. And again, I had come from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, so I had all of this data of how many women, especially 1 million women, couldn't get back into the workforce post-pandemic because so many centers had closed during the pandemic, especially infant care, because the ratios. And so I toured 3 facilities with my husband when I was 5 months pregnant. And when I was going back to work 9 months later, I still hadn't gotten off any of those daycare wait lists. And so I brought my son with me to work for the first month that I went back to work. And so I had to pack and play in my office. I was taking meetings with an infant in my lap, and it was one of those things where it just was a catalyst to me accidentally becoming this statewide leader in childcare in Pennsylvania. And so we finally found a home care situation for my son. But in speaking with our government affairs consultant, I was like, I know this is a big issue.
Yeah.
And so we went to one of our Chester County state reps and we said, we think this is, a bill that could be worked on and bipartisan. And so it just catapulted into letters to the editor. I wrote a letter to the editor of one of our local papers of here's 4 ways you can probably fix the childcare system here. And then it was letters to the legislature. We held press conferences. I had a sign-on letter with 55 chambers across Pennsylvania, including the State Economic Development Council, thanks to Mike. And that was the first time we really built this, local coalition around this issue, with so many people across Pennsylvania representing, tens of thousands of businesses. And so it was one of the most bipartisan voted bills in 2023. And we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And it was signed into law 6 months later in the budget by the governor. And so the bill itself was an extension of the child care tax credit and expansion. where Pennsylvania used to match 30% of the federal credit, and now, thanks to this bill, it matches 100%. And so 220,000 families can take that credit. And it's one of those things I'll hang my hat on at the end of the day for my whole career, because
congratulations.
Thank you. You know, and we really led the charge in Chester County, and it led to so many people across the state seeing us as the chamber of advocacy. And, you know, we've done corporate net income tax, as I mentioned before, permitting reform, regulatory reform, but then housing. We do a lot of SEPTA right now while we're in a budget stalemate, a lot of SEPTA advocacy. And that's just one of those things where we're just trying to make it a business issue. If your employees can't get to work because of childcare breakdowns, which we've seen all the numbers, that it really does affect productivity. People are leaving the workforce. Yeah. And for myself included, you know, now I have two, and it's a struggle. And I've got to give credit to parents who are in the workforce and making it work, because it is not easy.
You know what? Everybody who goes through it says, I don't know how I did it. Yeah. So thank you for the rippling effect that you've lasted on that. Mike, your personal passion.
Yeah. I'm glad Laura went first.
Yeah. That's tough to beat. I mean,
that too. You're right.
Talk about carrying the torch, right? You know.
But it gave me a chance to think of how I want to answer that, because we have a team of like 45 people, and there's a bunch of different programs, and I'm hesitant to pick one that, you know, I'm passionate about all of them. But I think personally, what I think about, you know, over the last year, I've really tried to think about how I can, you know, we've grown as an organization, and I have responsibility for leading the staff. So I've like, one of my passions has been, how can I be a better leader? How can I be more effective leading the staff, being more of a resource, be more supportive to them. You know, I did. You guys have probably both gone through this. I did a 360 review. Have you ever done one of these?
Yeah.
It was very. It was a very positive. I had nothing but positive to say. But one of the things that it came back to is that I need to be more present in the office, and I tend to just kind of buzz in, come to my office, and open the laptop and get going. And you know, so I'm trying. There's a bunch of other things, but that's an example of, you know, trying to be more present for the staff and asking about, you know, how's the kids, how's the, you know, how's your spouse doing, or, you know, just the small talk thing that you kind of take for granted is important. And I was reminded of that through this 360 process. So I'm trying, but then that's one example. But, you know, I think sometimes I get you know, a little frustrated, because I love doing our mission work, the economic development work, working with the clients, working with the business owners, but my role, my job requires to be more hands-on with the staff and working with the staff and working on budgets and you know, the overall what's the future of the organization, all those strategic thinking, which I love too. But I'm trying to be more mindful of that leadership role and being more thoughtful about how to be an effective leader.
That's a personal struggle that I'm going through right now. I could be out every day, all day long with business owners. There's nothing more exciting than learning how they make a living, spending time with them, helping them, growing. The people who were here before, we just talked about, you know, the resounding way we were able to aid their business and give them greater efficiency to manage their finances. However, I do have a whole business to run. Right? So, you know, there's about 75,000 other priorities that I need to get done. And while that's a component to my job, finding that happy medium between there is a critical component.
I have to give Mike credit, because I have a staff of 4.5, and I just can't even imagine. 44, you said? Yeah. And like, you know, I think I said I took this job at 32. So like, I'm learning CEO school on the fly of budgeting, and we need a new roof, and the HVAC system broke, and, you know, HR, somebody always has a crisis of some sort. So it's,
and at some point you had a pack and play in there during coursework. During coursework.
Yes. So it's definitely, I got to give Mike credit, because the organization he runs is big, and to do it, you said 26 years. Yeah. You know, I hope we're sitting here in 26 years and I'm looking back and like, I know how he is as a manager, and I'm sure he's fantastic.
How did you get into this?
Randomly, like a lot. Yeah. So I went to college. I went to Ithaca College, and my wife makes fun of me all the time. My major was exercise science, so I was going to be like a athletic trainer or something more in the healthcare.
I could see that actually. Yeah.
And then I worked for a couple years out of college, and then I went to get an MBA at Villanova. So when I was at Villanova, there was just this random posting of the Chester County Economic Development Council was looking for an intern. And so we have a board that's got a lot of corporate and business leaders on it. So I said, perfect. I'll spend a few months interning, meet a bunch of business leaders, and find my next job, and off I go. And here I am 26 years later. So I stumbled on it, and it's, once you're in there and spend a little bit of time there, it's hard to leave, because it's just fun. You meet different people, different leaders. There's a new challenge every day. So yeah, I stumbled into it.
I actually stumbled into banking myself. I had a sister who wouldn't leave me alone, telling me that all the odd jobs I did throughout college would not look good on a resume. So I went down to career services and pulled a tab for a bank, and here I am 27 years later. So the world moved in that direction. Laura, how about you? I heard you working for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but what's been your journey?
So I'm born and raised in Chester County, and I married my high school sweetheart, who's also from Chester County.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're both. I'm a dual Pennsylvania graduate. He also went to Pennsylvania State System School. So we really are so committed to this community. And out of college, I was in political fundraising. And I wanted to be an attorney. And my dad, I remember, told somebody when I was looking for an internship, my sophomore year of college, he said, my daughter would be an effective lobbyist tomorrow. And so here we are, 15 years later, and I pretty much am a lobbyist. Yeah. But I went from political fundraising to Villanova. I did government relations and community relations, and that's where I really learned what a Chamber of Commerce was and the impact on the community. So from there, I was poached by the U.S. Chamber. And when this job came up, somebody called, and I said, well, I'm 6 months pregnant, so I'm not a great candidate for hire right now. And they said, well, why don't you interview? Came in, and I think they just saw the passion I have for this community. And, I really go to work every day and just want to make it better. And so I'm very, very happy to be here, work with Mike and, all of our community partners. Chester County, I think you said it earlier, is just such a special place.
It is a special place. Mm-hmm. If I tie us back to both of your organizations, where's the best place for people to get started, for them to get resources? I mean, there's obviously websites, there's obviously documentation, but how do they get themselves involved and to be part of the fabric of what you're having to offer? Because it's deep, right? When you think about the networking opportunity, when you think about business connections, when you think about the communities individually and how you tie yourself in, the opportunities in front of you, and then you think about the education. You think about all of the funding education. You think about the education of running your business, the economic education that you have to offer. Where does somebody get started? Because I could see for a startup business or for a business where the CEO or COO is a jack of all trades, washing bottles, delivering food, and cooking the food and cleaning up at the end of the night. It could become overwhelming to them to think about all the resources that are available and how to filter through it. What's the best way to get started?
Yeah. For us, I think just call us, email us. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's most important to me as an organization is that we're responsive. I remember vividly during COVID times, I can't tell you how many compliments we got just for calling people back. Like, oh my God, you called me back. Like we got that repeatedly. And that really, I mean, we've always had that, but that really resonated in me, how important it is to call people back and respond to people, no matter how wacky you think the business idea might be or whatever. So I would say just call us, email us. And then in terms of getting involved, I think that's a little bit more on the person or the entrepreneur to take advantage of what's there. I mean, there's 15,000 businesses plus in Chester County alone. So, we can't kind of keep tabs on all that, and they've got to continue to be engaged. And we're trying to put as many resources out there. But once you kind of get hooked onto us, I think it's kind of on the entrepreneur to kind of be proactive and stay engaged. And we'll keep responding. And if you keep asking for help, we'll keep coming back to you.
Yeah, I would say piggybacking off of that, I always say you get out of the chamber what you put in.
Yeah.
You got to come to our events, you got to read our emails, and you got to show up knowing that you have to put in a little effort too. Like, we'll hold your hand to start, but then we want you to, flourish and fly away. But our website, our social media, give us a call, similar to Mike, like we're so entrenched, like I'm go meet with anybody and everyone. And, as you said, like there's no job that I won't do. So I think it's just making that initial outreach. I think for a lot of people, especially to go to an event, it's scary. So we have ambassadors with the chamber that will reach out to you when you join, and they say, hey, are you going to this next luncheon or this happy hour? Like, I'll meet you there, and we can, make rounds together, which I think is a great aspect of the chamber.
It certainly makes it an easier approach to somebody who isn't out there and gregarious. Yeah, for sure. When you're thinking about the next phase of where your organizations are headed, what's in the future for both of your organizations?
I think just to start, like, collaboratively, Mike and I have done a lot of work together recently where we've written op-eds together. We've gone to Harrisburg together to do some advocacy. We've been hosting events together as well. We last year had a massive turnout, over 500 people for a CEO event that we had, where we had the CEOs of Wawa, CTDI, CHOP, and Vanguard. And I think it was because of the names, the EDC and the CCCBI working together for the first time, and our transportation management joined us in Westchester University. And it was just like the caliber of, wow, like, we had these CEOs coming to Chester County, and we're already planning for next year. And so I do really think collaboratively, sky's the limit for us as we continue to work together. And then for the chamber, I'd love to just keep growing. When I first got here, post-pandemic, CEO transition, there was a lot sort of to turn the ship around. But I feel like I've kind of played defense for 3 years, and this year I'm so ready to play offense. Like, I finally feel like I've got the right staff in place. We've sold out every single event we've had in 2025.
Congratulations.
Which just people are just like excited to be around. So I just think the sky's the limit for us.
Yeah, I echo Laura's enthusiasm for the collaboration. There's a lot of it that's already happened. I know we have a series of meetings coming up, strategic meetings, where we'll be kind of jointly meeting with some leaders throughout the county. So I think there's a lot of those collaborative opportunities, plus some of the regional stuff as well that we talked about. So I think that's definitely a theme. I think for us too, there's a number of new programs. I talked earlier about some of the funding ones. We're real proud. Just last month we got certified as what's called the CDFI, Community Development Finance Institute, which will open a whole other set of doors for small business lending. So those, a lot of the deals that we're doing, we have something right now that exists today called the Catalyst Fund, which is a $22 million revolving loan fund, and that is for loan sizes probably from $50,000 to $250,000. And candidly, most of those loans are not bankable conventionally, so we're trying to find creative ways to get those loans done. And so this CDFI certification is going to open more doors to do a lot of that similar stuff. So that access to capital theme is huge for us. We're also on October 1st going to launch an angel group. So this is, think more of your emerging tech companies, your med device company, your app, your life science, those types of companies that are in the startup mode that are maybe past friends and family but not quite ready for VC or maybe Ben Franklin. We're trying to fill that gap, what we're calling the I2N Angels. So a lot of those funding things is where we're trying to focus attention. And then there's some other newer program ideas we're talking about too. But it's definitely, I think the next, say, 3 years will be an area of continued, I think, collaboration and growth are probably two of the themes.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff. Monday morning quarterback, hindsight's 2020. If I knew then what I know now, right? Terms, right? Mm-hmm. So as you approach both of your positions, huge impact on the communities where we're at now, right? So when you took these seats, what are some of the things that you, if you knew then, would have been a dynamic approach to kind of jumping in? It's kind of a loaded question, but
it is loaded. I think I'm stuck.
That was the idea, Mike. I got to be honest with you.
You got me.
I think for me, like being 32 when I took this job, a lot of millennials, I think, talk about imposter syndrome, where I just was like, whew, this is big. And, having 2 kids in the meantime and really learning to juggle everything. But I think for me, just knowing I belong here and like I can be in the room with, a bunch of C-suite execs in suits, and I belong in that room. And I think probably for any entrepreneur or anyone that you've talked to, I think a lot of us who are younger are kind of just always thinking like, maybe I don't belong here. Or maybe somebody's going to figure it out someday. I had a professor in my master's program who said, I don't know if you actually know the material or you just happen to bring it up. And so that's always kind of been in the back of my mind of like, fake it till you make it. But
Yeah.
I actually do belong here. And I hope that, I continue to grow in this role. And like I said, for Mike, looking back in a couple decades and being like, I really did do it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it's a little bit of a cliche answer, but I just sitting here listening to Laura and she announced her age, and I feel like I was just 32. I literally just feel like last year I was 32.
I was in the gym this morning at about 5:30. It didn't feel 32.
Feel 32.
I got to be honest.
I hear you on that.
But I was there.
Yeah.
I was there. I was there.
I was not there.
Yeah,
so
I
good
was
job.
there. It just did not feel 32.
Yeah, I hear you, but it feels like yesterday. So that it's, as I say, it's a little bit cliche, but I can't believe that it's I'm not 32 anymore, and how quickly
I am 34 now for the record.
I thought you said 32. I'm sorry.
That's when I took the job.
Oh God! All right, I should listen more closely. But so I guess I would say to really appreciate that journey. I mean, it's been an awesome journey. I don't want to suggest that I took it for granted, but it was, it's an awesome place to be. It's an awesome role. I'm grateful for the support that I've gotten over the years from our executive committee, from our board, and I would just, if I could talk to my 32-year-old self, I would say enjoy this and appreciate it, and just think how lucky you are to have the support of there's on both boards, there are really some really impressive people that are very busy, that spend a lot of time with us, helping us, guide the organizations and make sure those organizations are successful. So having a true appreciation for that, I think, is a huge piece of advice I would give my younger self, or anybody that's a little bit younger and just starting their career.
That's a heck of a nugget. It's a good one.
Great answer, Mike.
It's a good one. All right. So I think we're coming to kind of our final landing gear. So one of the things I'll ask each of you is to think about a final statement. Like when you think about our audience, entrepreneurs, members of Citadel, or frankly, people who are just part of the business community, and not just Chester County, but in the greater Commonwealth. What would your final statement be about your organizations and your commitment?
You have to go first this time.
Okay, so, all right, that's fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so I would say that my final statement would be, reach out to us. We are, again, cliche. We are here to help. That's why we exist. Our team is passionate about its mission. That's why we're there. There's probably a lot of people on our team that could work and probably make more money working somewhere in the private sector, but they've chosen not to because they really embrace our mission and want to carry out that mission. So we are eager for we're eager to help. So whether you're a company, whether you're an individual that's transitioning jobs, whether you're a community that thinks there might be some opportunity to improve a parcel or whatever in your community, we are excited to do it. That's why we do what we do. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, when you asked the question, the first thing that popped in my head was get involved. And I think to Mike's point, like, our staff loves going to work every day because what we do and the people we meet and how we get to help them. So I would say, reach out, come to an event. You don't even have to join to start, but just come to an event, see what we're all about. And then I know once you get there and you're in it, you're going to become a member.
Well, on behalf of Citadel and the greater business community here in Chester County and in our Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, thank you. Thank you for the work you do, your passion, your drive, and for bringing these resources available to the business community to continue to move forward. Well, thank you for joining us here today, everyone. This was another great session and hopefully chock full of a ton of information as a resource for you to be able to help continue growing your business. On behalf of Citadel Credit Union and the Open for Business podcast, have a great day. Hey now.